Entire bloodlines ended, not by divine will, but by political calculation. You suddenly feel a cramp in your gut, a knot of ice and fire. You tell yourself it's just fear, but then you look down the dusty road, the one leading to the next defiant village on the route. In the distance, you see a small cloud of dust rising, the shape of a cart, a single driver, another merchant coming to offer a gift to the thirsty. The path is not yet clear. The metallic tang of your own fear floods the back of your throat. Forget everything you think you know about surgery. This is not about delicate skill. This is about violence and velocity. The surgeon takes the saw. There is no gentle incision, no careful preparation. The blade bites into your thigh with a wet, grinding shriek that you feel in your teeth, in the core of your soul. The pain is a white-hot supernova, a universe of agony that eclipses thought, time, and sound. It is over in less than a minute. Your leg is gone. 100 pairs of eyes are fixed on the statue of the Virgin, her painted face serene in the flickering chaos of a dozen tallow candles. Your own eyes burn, not from the smoke, but from the strain of watching, of waiting. For weeks, the whispers have haunted your village, like the fog that rolls in from the Atlantic. Ghostly lights on the water, ships with no sails, crewed by shadows, gliding into forbidden coves in the dead of night. Fishermen who saw too much and now say too little, their eyes hollowed out by a fear older than God. Her eyes are fixed on her work. She taps a bony finger on a complex spiral of yellow thread. The bailiff sees a snail's shell, a child's fancy. What do you see? You lean closer, your breath fogging in the frigid air. You trace the pattern. The waning moon, you whisper. And these 3 knots, 3 nights after. And this blue wave? High tide at the hidden cove. She nods, a barely perceptible motion. Good. Her needle begins to move again, this time with a red thread you've never seen her use before. You glance over your shoulder at the tapestry. In the woven image of a stag being cornered by hounds, you see it. The curve of the coastline you are currently falsifying. The position of the hounds marks safe harbors. The flight path of a falcon in the corner indicates the direction of the prevailing winds in summer. It's all there, a language of thread and dye. And to understand it is to hold the keys to the kingdom. To even possess this knowledge is an act of rebellion so profound, it has to be punished by erasure. And this war is not a cause, it's a payment plan. The ink on the page is faded, a ghost of a ghost, but the figures are undeniable. You see the name, whispered only in the darkest corners of European ports, the Compass, a merchant syndicate with no flag, no king, and no loyalty but to profit. The ledger details a secret covenant, a deal made in desperation. The crown couldn't repay its debt with gold or land, so it offered something far more valuable, a 300-year license to break the law. The church has built a prison for the mind, and this secret guild, this ghost fleet, is smuggling in the keys to unlock it. But as you stare into the infinite darkness above, you can't help but wonder, are they trying to set the world free? Or are they just building a new prison, one where they are the only jailers who hold all the keys? The metallic taste of fear is something you never forget. It's the taste of a secret you can't spit out. It's the same cold dread that echoes in our modern world, the fear of an engineered pandemic, of poison in the reservoir, of an enemy who doesn't wear a uniform but walks among us, carrying a gift. The truth is, medieval power wasn't just about castles and armies. It was about controlling the narrative. And what better narrative than an angry god? It absolves the guilty and terrifies the survivors into compliance. It's a psychological war fought with microbes. You look around at the silent houses, at the closed doors. The fever sweats, the black lines creeping up your skin. A slow, agonizing death is a certainty. The surgeon offers the only other path, a minute of pure, hellish torture. You look at him. He isn't the fumbling fool from your history books. His eyes are cold, clear, and focused. There is no kindness in them, only a terrible, swift purpose. He offers you a leather strap to bite down on. Two assistants, their faces grim, grab your arms and your good leg, pinning you to the blood-stained plank of a table. The most powerful weapon in the Middle Ages wasn't a sword, it was a tear. You are on your knees, the cold of the granite floor seeping through the thin wool of your trousers, a familiar ache in your bones. The air in the parish church is thick, a heavy blanket woven from damp stone, melting beeswax, and the scent of the sea clinging to every unwashed body. It's the smell of hope and desperation. Outside, the Cornish wind howls a lonely song around the tower. But in here, there is only a breathless, crushing silence. The air smells of lanolin, wood smoke, and something else, the metallic tang of secrets. Her needle, a sliver of polished bone, dips and rises through a heavy quilt. You hear the soft, rhythmic shush of it piercing the coarse wool, followed by the taut pluck as she pulls the dark thread tight. To anyone else, it's the quiet, domestic sound of a woman mending. But you know, this is the sound of war. "Watch my hands, child, not the flame," she murmurs, her voice as rough as the wool itself. She doesn't look at you. They are hidden in plain sight, encoded as star charts in the stained glass windows of churches, woven into the borders of tapestries, sung as verses in children's rhymes. This is the forbidden knowledge. This is the geography of power. The explorers they praise in the history books, the heroes who discovered new worlds, they weren't sailing into the unknown. They were following these secret maps, funded by shadow syndicates, charting not wonders, but resources to be bled dry. Gold, spices, bodies. The official monstrous maps were for everyone else, for you, to keep you from the prize. It's not the king's lion, but a two-headed serpent, its wax so dark it seems to drink the light. You break the seal. The sound is a dry, brittle crack, like a bone snapping. Tiny flecks of ancient wax dust the brittle page. This is the Ghost Ledger. It holds no names of soldiers, no records of heroic battles. It holds only a number, a debt so vast it could swallow the kingdom whole. This is the truth 99% of people, then and now, will never learn. The English crown isn't fighting for political allies. It is drowning. Books from Alexandria, Baghdad, Cordoba. Books that contain mathematics that can predict the movement of those stars. Books that describe atoms. Books that suggest the Earth is a sphere, spinning in an infinite void. Knowledge that would not just get you burned for heresy, it would shatter the very foundation of the world you know. "We are not smugglers, boy," the curator says, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "We are librarians. And this is the most dangerous library in the world. You finally understand. This isn't just about money or power. This is a war over reality itself. A system that hides in plain sight, that convinces you a prison is a paradise and that a global conspiracy is just a funny story. They lied about the past, sanitizing its horrors and hiding its secrets. It leaves us with only one terrifying question. What else are they lying about right now? A barrel of river water, tainted with filth, gifted by a friendly traveling merchant during a dry spell. An act of kindness that becomes an invisible blade. You dip your fingers into the well bucket. The water is cool. You raise them to your lips, a habit from 1,000 thirsty journeys. There it is, a faint, unfamiliar taste. Not of earth or stone, but a flat, metallic tang that coats the back of your throat. The taste of a weapon that cannot be seen. A murderer who cannot be accused. The first sound isn't the scream, it's the sizzle. A high-pitched, angry hiss as the iron poker is plunged deeper into the glowing coals. That sound is the secret. It's the brutal truth that 99% of people, spoon-fed a myth of bumbling medieval doctors, will never learn. Your world has shrunk to this tent. The canvas flaps listlessly, offering no escape from the thick, cloying air. A cocktail of sweat, fear, and stale wine. Your leg is a ruin of splintered bone and torn muscle. The sweet, sickly smell of rot already creeping from the wound. You know what it means. This single piece of vellum changes everything. It proves that the great war between faith and heresy was a lie. It was a market negotiation. But as you stare at the name of the guild, the compass, a colder thought emerges. If the Pope blessed this trade in forbidden ideas, what exactly are they smuggling that is worth a 30% stake in hell itself? And who else knows this secret? The greatest conspiracies in history were never written down. They were woven into the clothes on your back and stitched into the blankets on your bed. The only light is the angry, sputtering orange of the hearth. It throws your grandmother's shadow against the wattle and daub wall, making her a giant. Her face is a roadmap of winters you can't yet imagine. Her hands gnarled and stained from dye, but they move with a frightening grace. You sit on the packed earth floor, the cold seeping through your thin tunic, and watch. You saw the look in his eyes the day he showed you the real chart. It wasn't on vellum. It was a code woven into the geometric patterns of a prayer rug. A secret language of knots and colors passed down by an organization that has no name. But you call them the compass. They have the real maps. Charts showing hidden coves perfect for smuggling salt and wine. Diagrams of river systems that could bypass a king's tax collectors. What they don't want you to know is that the war was a lie. You are told it is a story of kings and parliaments, of faith and fury, a civil war that splits a nation's soul. But here, in this cold, forgotten room deep beneath the royal treasury, the truth smells of beeswax and decaying parchment. The only light comes from a single tallow candle, its flame guttering, making your shadow dance against stone walls that have seen too many secrets. Your fingers, numb with cold, trace the seal on a ledger that officially doesn't exist. This is how they've operated for centuries, a conspiracy of sailors, scholars, and spies, all hidden behind the perfect alibi of a forgotten war. One night, the curator finds you staring at the stars. He stands beside you, the deck creaking a soft, rhythmic complaint beneath your feet. They tell you God placed those lights in the sky for His glory, he says, his voice low. A fixed and perfect tapestry. That's what the church teaches. It's a beautiful story. It's also a lie. He then tells you about the books in the hold below. Think of the financial crises, explained with a language designed to confuse, that serve as cover for the greatest wealth transfers in human history. You have been taught to look for armies and battles, for kings and crowns. But the real power doesn't wear a uniform. It operates in the shadows, on the lines of a secret ledger, in the fine print of a trade agreement, and behind the friendly mask of a joke. The longest war wasn't an anomaly. It was a revelation of the true system. The water below is still and clear, reflecting the empty blue sky. But you remember the stories. Villages like this one, known for helping smugglers, for having loose tongues about the Baron's troop movements, suffering from sudden, violent outbreaks. Dysentery, the sweating sickness. The church priests arrive a week later, wringing their hands and calling it God's righteous fury against the sinful. But those with their ear to the dirt, they hear another name whispered. The compass. They call it clearing a path. It was terrifyingly simple. A single cask of contaminated grain. His burned research pointed to a single name, a single event in the 1650s that started the 2 centuries of blood and salt and silence. The name of the man who lit the first fire, who committed the first convenient murder, and whose powerful descendants were willing to kill to keep that name a secret. This is the medieval version of a regulatory body being secretly owned by the very industry it's supposed to police. It's a protection racket with God as the silent partner. While poor men are being excommunicated for charging a peasant a penny's interest on a loaf of bread, the Holy See itself is the largest shareholder in a multinational corporation built on the very same sin. The ink doesn't just seem to pulse with dark energy, it is dark energy. The documented moment an institution decided its power was more important than its soul. Out here, in this phantom war, the only thing more dangerous than a declared enemy is a supposed ally who has discovered your secret. Thomas was found at the bottom of a harbor, his lungs full of water, despite being the strongest swimmer in the city. An unfortunate accident. William fell from a scaffold while inspecting a cathedral roof. Elias simply vanished. All 3 had one thing in common. They tried to correct the king's map. They tried to draw the truth. And the truth, in this world, is a terminal illness. An entire branch of modern historians refuses to even acknowledge this pattern, dismissing it as coincidence. They prefer the sanitized version of history, but you know better. You were Elias's apprentice. The final, haunting truth settles over you. The most successful conspiracies are the ones that end not with a scream, but with a round of applause. And all that's left is the faint, ghostly whisper on the wind, a story of a war that never was, hiding a truth that will never be told. You are sailing east, not to Holland to fight a war, but towards the heart of the Mediterranean, towards the dying embers of the Byzantine Empire. The man in charge is not a captain, but a scholar who calls himself a curator. He teaches you your new life. You learn to read not just words, but codes. You learn that the cargo is logged as Venetian glass or olive oil, but the real manifest is a sequence of knots tied into a specific rope. The Ghost Fleet wasn't fighting the Dutch. It was enforcing the rules of a new kind of economy, one that strangled the world while its creators stayed hidden. They didn't just lie about a battle. They lied about the very nature of power. They perfected a system that is still in use, a blueprint for control. Think of the endless wars we fight today, on concepts you can never defeat. Terror, drugs, poverty. Wars that grant extraordinary powers and enrich private contractors, yet never seem to end. A pitcher of water sits on the table, half full. The air is stale with the faint, sweet smell of death. 99% of people believe biological warfare is an invention of the modern age, a terror born of labs and microscopes. What they don't want you to know is that power has always understood the most efficient way to kill. It isn't with a sword, which leaves a witness, but with a whisper in the water. You walk to the village well, the heart of the community. The rope is damp, the bucket half raised. He was digging up a 200-year-old crime, but the people who silenced him were not ghosts. They were his neighbors. They were the men who ran the shipping councils and the parish boards. And what he uncovered about their grandfathers threatened their own fortunes. Keene was erased because he found the end point of the lie. But the real secret, the one that makes the embers of his home still feel hot to the touch, wasn't just the lie itself. It was the beginning. It grants a special dispensation, a holy pardon for unholy work. The parchment doesn't just forgive the smuggling of forbidden books and the sin of usury. It blesses it. And then you see the price for this divine forgiveness. The price for the church to look the other way. Triginta centesimas, 30%, a staggering cut of all profits paid directly into the papal coffers. The realization hits you with the force of a physical blow. The church didn't want to stamp out heresy. It wanted to control the supply, to use the king's own manufactured war as a shield to smuggle the very items that undermine his authority and the church's dogma. It's a secret that, if ever revealed, would not just topple a syndicate, but shatter the entire moral foundation of Christendom. A cry from the crow's nest slices through the damp air. Sail ho! But the lookout's voice isn't triumphant. It's tight, laced with a fear that has nothing to do with honorable battle. Every head on deck snaps towards the horizon. What 99% of people today see as charming, primitive ignorance, the misplaced continents, the grinning krakens, the lands of dog-headed men, is in fact a meticulously crafted prison wall made of ink and lies. It's propaganda, designed to keep merchants from profitable routes, to keep armies from secret weaknesses, and to keep peasants from ever imagining a world beyond their lord's land. You dip the quill again, the metallic taste of fear coating the back of your throat. 3 men before you held this title, Royal Cartographer. All 3 are dead. The real peace treaty isn't ending a war with the Dutch. It's a final, silent agreement to let the grand deception of the Dark Ages stand. To let the world believe that history is a simple, linear progression, not a brutal, ongoing war for control of the narrative. As the champagne corks pop, a sound so different from the crack of a crate on a midnight beach, you look at the smiling faces and feel a profound, bottomless chill. They have won. The war for reality is over, and most people will never even know it was fought. The air smelled of wood smoke and roasted meat, a world away from the fish gut smell of your now empty cottage. He didn't offer condolences. He offered you a choice that was not a choice at all. You could stay here, a marked boy, and wait for your own accident. Or you could take your father's place. You could join the ghosts. Now, you stand on the deck of a ship called the Silent Quill. The name is a cruel joke you don't yet understand. This is the secret they buried in a pub, under a pile of laughter and a meaningless treaty. The war was a machine, a perfectly engineered state of emergency designed to do one thing: transfer all the wealth and all the control from your hands to theirs. The king's ghost debt, the weaponized miracles, the prison island you feared. It was all just noise. The real history, the one 99% of people will never know, is written in the secret ledgers. A silent one is a tomb. You push open the door to the weaver's cottage. It scrapes against the stone floor, the sound of violation in the stillness. Inside, the family is all there. The father is slumped at the table, his head resting in a bowl of hardened stew. The mother lies on the floor by the hearth, her hand outstretched towards her two small children, who look as if they've simply fallen asleep on their straw mattress. There are no wounds, no signs of struggle, just a deep, unnatural peace. It mirrors the modern reality of every whistleblower who has been discredited, every journalist who has been silenced for getting too close to the crimes of a powerful institution. We call it character assassination or corporate espionage now, but it's the same fire, just a different flame. History is a living conspiracy, a constant, brutal negotiation between what happened and what we are allowed to know. Keen's ghost is a chilling reminder that there are truths buried right under our feet, hidden not by time, but by power. Usuria, the sin of lending money at interest, a practice that preachers promise will earn you an eternity in flames. Heresis, the Protestant ideas filtering down from the Netherlands, words that could get a man burned alive in the town square. Philosophia Gentilium, the works of heathen thinkers, knowledge so dangerous it was said to curdle a good Christian soul. These are the sins of a shadowy merchant guild known only as the Compass, and this bull, bearing the seal of God's own representative on earth, does not condemn them, it absolves them. Here you just call it Tuesday. It's the oldest trick of the powerful. Invent a monster, then sell the protection. You look at the faces of your crewmates. They aren't patriots. They are desperate men, disgraced merchants, and runaway apprentices from a dozen different lands, all bound by a shared desire for the one thing the feudal world denies them: a chance. They are the cogs in a machine of hypocrisy, risking their lives to deliver forbidden thoughts to the very nobles who would hang them for possessing those same thoughts in public. Imagine the sheer audacity. You are drawing a sea serpent where you know there is a deep, safe channel. You are sketching a mountain range where you know there lies a coastline, undefended and open to any ship with the courage to land there. This is your job. This is the king's map, and it is designed to keep the world blind. What they don't want you to know is that a medieval map is an instrument of control, not information. It's a charming, funny story for the evening news. You watch the Dutch ambassador, a man whose family has been tied to the guild for 2 centuries, shake hands with the council chairman, another initiated member. They're performing the last ritual. They're closing a book that was written in blood and lies, and they are disguising it as a light-hearted farce. This is how you bury a secret forever. You don't hide it in a locked vault. You tell it as a joke in a pub, and you let the world laugh. 97% of medieval people never traveled more than 10 miles from their birthplace. You are about to become part of the 3%, not by choice. Your father is gone. A boating accident, they said. No body was ever found. But you remember the look on the shrouded man's face. You know it was no accident. Sir Richard called for you the next day. You stood in the great hall of the manor, the floor cold enough to feel through your thin shoes. The 335 Years' War was never a war. It was a blueprint, a piece of paper, a legal fiction, a ghost story, told for so long that the ink became blood and the lie became your reality. For 3 centuries, you were told to fear a ghost fleet on the horizon. But the real war wasn't on the water. It was in the back rooms, in the quiet clinking of coins, in the whispered agreements between the state, the church, and the men of capital. The plague arrives, not with a cough, but with a merchant's smile. You walk into the village of Oakhaven at high noon, but the sun feels cold. The silence is the first thing that hits you, a quiet so profound it feels like a weight pressing on your ears. There are no children shouting, no blacksmith's hammer, no women calling from their windows. The only sound is the lazy, contented buzz of flies, thousands of them, tracing constellations in the thick, still air. You've walked these smuggling routes for years, and a quiet village is a bad village. You can almost hear the sound of it. A quiet knock on the door in the dead of night. A cup of tea that tastes faintly of almonds. The metallic taste of fear as a community learns the hard lesson of silence. The most dangerous thing in the world is not a sword or a plague. It is telling a truth people are not ready to hear. This is the part that should keep you awake. Keen's story isn't about the past. The candlelight is a nervous, living thing. In your hands is a document that feels heavier than lead, warmer than skin. A papal bull. The vellum is thick, creamy, but the ink seems to writhe, the elegant Latin script coiling like black snakes. You can almost hear the scratch of the quill that wrote it, a dry, skeletal sound in a silent, gilded room in the Vatican. This isn't a prayer, it's a contract. Your finger traces the damning words, each one a nail in the coffin of piety. This is the hidden engine of the late medieval world. The war is the perfect cover, a masterstroke of political theater. It gives you license. Any ship you encounter on the open ocean can be stopped, boarded, and accused of being an enemy sympathizer. Any cargo they carry is declared contraband of war and seized for the compass. It's the exact same predatory logic that governments will use centuries from now, creating a war on drugs or a war on terror to justify seizing property with little due process. They call it asset forfeiture. The map you are drawing is a lie, and the real map, the one that could get you killed, isn't on this sheet of vellum. It's hanging on the stone wall behind you, disguised as a tapestry of a royal hunt. The candle gutters, and your shadow writhes like a hanged man. Your fingers are stained black with ink, a permanent mark of your trade and your treason. In the oppressive silence of your small, cold room, the only sound is the wet scrape of your quill. It's a sound like a fingernail dragging across a tombstone. 99% of people who hear this story laugh. They think it's a funny quirk. They don't understand it was the Guild's greatest masterstroke, the final seal on their secret. It was the perfect hiding place. No one looks for a conspiracy inside a punchline. The official story is that a local historian, a man named Roy Duncan, discovered the war and wrote to the Dutch embassy. A peace treaty was arranged. It is being signed here, in this pub, by the Dutch ambassador and the chairman of the local council. There are cameras, reporters. The signature on a piece of parchment that can legally steal the food from your mouth. all while making you believe it is for your own salvation. Just like today, a crisis, real or imagined, is the oldest and most effective tool for control. A way to make people give up their freedom and their money for a safety that was never truly at risk. And as you walk out into the thin sunlight, a new, more terrifying question forms in your mind. If they can fake a war for 300 years, what else are they faking? It allows the public to feel like they are in on it, while ensuring the true crime is never investigated. By laughing at the absurdity, you become an accomplice to the cover-up. You accept the story they've given you because the truth is too complicated, too dark, and not nearly as fun to tell at a dinner party. They didn't just end a war in this pub. They taught the world how to hide a secret in plain sight, proving that the most effective way to bury the truth is to make people laugh at its gravestone. And you know, with a certainty that chills the air around you, if the Baron's men ever learned how to read this thread, your life wouldn't be worth the breath it takes to scream. No body was ever found. He dissolved back into the coastal fog from which he had gathered his stories. This isn't a medieval tale of superstition. This is a meticulously executed 19th century cover-up. The three people who had seen his manuscript, his only confidants, were dead within a year. The doctor's reports read sudden illness, a vague and chillingly final diagnosis. The church taught you that some thoughts were sins and some books were gateways to hell. What they never told you is that they were the ones selling the keys. 99% of people believe the monolithic power of the church was built on faith alone. The truth, buried in the binding of a forgotten Bible, is that it was also built on a business model of pure, calculated hypocrisy. Imagine you are there, the one who found it. The air in the scriptorium is cold and dead, tasting of dry parchment and forgotten prayers. Inside are heretical books, fresh off the printing presses in Amsterdam. Books that argue the earth revolves around the sun. Books that question the divine authority of popes and kings. Knowledge that could get a man burned alive on land. But out here, it's just another commodity with a high profit margin. In another crate, nestled in straw, are astrolabes and cross staffs of a precision forbidden by the guilds. Navigational tools so advanced they are considered black magic. And below it all, tons of untaxed French wine, Flemish wool, and Spanish silver. Contraband that funds this entire shadow operation. And as the great flagstone grinds back into place, sealing the secret once more, you are left in the flickering dark with a far more terrifying question. What truths are they hiding that are more dangerous than silks and spices? And now that you are part of the silence, are you damned right along with them? They are the descendants of the guild, though they don't call themselves that anymore. They are historians, diplomats, bankers, lawyers. The curator is no longer a man, but a board of directors. The Ghost Fleet is now a network of offshore accounts and encrypted servers. Their mission of controlling knowledge has been so successful, it is now simply called the establishment. For 335 years, the state of war between the Netherlands and the Isles of Scilly, the final remnant of that old Cornish coastal territory, has remained on the books. A bureaucratic oversight, a historical absurdity. It's the men who pay your father in shillings that smell of foreign spice and old leather. After the service, the Lord Steward pins a new notice to the church door. The war tax is being increased for the purchase of new cannons. To protect the coast, You look from the notice to Sir Richard's fine wool cloak, to the priest's downcast eyes, and you feel a cold, adult certainty settle in your bones. There will be no cannons. This is the true, dark magic of the Middle Ages. Not spells and demons, but paperwork. The story is no longer about a conspiracy. It's about the silly little war that ended in a pub. This isn't just history. This is a tactic you see every single day. Think of the last massive political or corporate scandal you witnessed. Remember how, within days, the perpetrator was turned into a caricature, a meme? Remember how the sheer gravity of the crime was diffused by turning it into a running gag on late-night television? The joke is the last line of defense for the powerful. It is a shield made of laughter. The sound is sharp, final. The cloak is not just mended. An account has been settled. But tonight's work is different. Your fingers tremble just slightly. The ledger you just wove into this forgotten piece of wool is not for bread or salt or medicine. It is the final payment for the pitch, the black, sticky blood that will make the ghost fleet waterproof, that will seal the hulls of the ships that hold your men captive. He found the ghost debt, wealth that appeared from nowhere, tied to ships that were reported lost with all hands. He saw the pattern of convenient accidents, rival merchants, inquisitive customs officers, sailors who talked too much, all meeting untimely ends. He called his book The 200-Year Lie, and it was more than a history. It was an indictment. 99% of the historical narratives you have ever read are shaped not just by the winners, but by the survivors. We only read the stories that were not burned. Just weeks before publication, Keene's truth became ash, and then he simply vanished. Before they vanish back into the waves, you hear one of them say a name you recognize, a name that belongs to a lord who was publicly executed a month ago, a man who is supposed to be dead. And you realize the lie is even deeper than you imagined. They aren't just sending the living here to die. They are sending the dead here to live. Their true mission has nothing to do with fighting the Dutch. Their mission is to become the Atlantic, to monopolize its trade routes by force, to enforce the syndicate's will on any who dare sail without permission, and to transport the very goods the church and crown publicly condemn, but privately, desperately crave. You help hoist a heavy, waterproofed cask from the hold. The sound it makes as it scrapes against the wooden deck is a low, dull groan. Like a dying man, you know what's inside, not gunpowder or cannonballs. But as you help him shift a smaller, heavier chest into the darkness, you notice it's bound not with rope, but with stained leather straps. When your hand brushes against it, you don't feel the hard edges of a crate, but the unmistakable shape of books. Heavy, leather-bound books. This is the source of the metallic tang in the air, the scent of forbidden knowledge. Smuggling spices is a crime against the king, a sin of greed. But smuggling heretical texts, the kind the church burns along with the people who read them, that is a crime against God himself. But the enemy isn't on the horizon. It's in the mirror. All conspiracies end in one of two ways, with a bang or with a joke. The guild was smart enough to choose the joke. You are no longer you. The boy from Cornwall, the spy in Rome, the book hunter in Genoa. They are ghosts, memories buried under centuries of secrets. It is now 1986. You are in a pub. The air doesn't smell of damp stone and fear. It smells of stale beer, cigarette smoke, and disinfectant. Men in suits are laughing, raising glasses of lager. It was the center of control. The priests didn't just save souls, they managed minds. They could create an enemy out of thin air and make you thank them for the phantom protection they provided. You can hear the soft, wet scrape of your mother's fingernails against the rough-hewn pew beside you as she prays. An ASMR trigger of pure, manufactured devotion. She believes every word. She's terrified for your father out on the sea. She doesn't know the real danger isn't the Dutch. It is the final answer to the questions that have haunted these islands for generations. What about the ghost debt? The astronomical sum that could have bankrupted nations, now just a forgotten relic of a silly, non-existent war. What about the monastery's cargo? The true nature of what was being smuggled under the cover of piety, now irrelevant. And what about Thomas Keene? The man whose records of it all were so conveniently, so perfectly, burned to ash. All of it, the fear, the secrets, the generational wealth built on a lie, is washed away in a tide of good-natured laughter. This is the secret that history always forgets. When systems fail, when men are sent to fight ghost wars, it is the marginalized who build the lifeboats. It's a story that repeats today in the sprawling markets of war-torn cities and the dusty villages forgotten by governments. Official reports see only chaos and collapse. They don't see the women building an entire world in the shadows. Their ledgers hidden in the price of a tomato, the pattern of a headscarf, the braiding of a child's hair. You finish the final stitch and snip the thread with your teeth. You would see him walking the granite-strewn coast, his face turned to the sea, listening not to the waves, but to the stories of old men whose grandfathers had told them stories. He wasn't just a historian. He was a human divining rod for secrets. He spent his nights by a single candle, the light dancing across his face, cross-referencing the tidy official parish records with the dog-eared, salt-stained shipping logs that were never meant to survive. And here, in the margins of history, he found the pattern. He discovered the statistical anomalies that screamed of foul play. It's the sound you hear some nights, a single ringing bell from the lead ship, a signal that a powerful family on the mainland has finally been silenced for good, and that one of you is now disposable. You listen for that bell every night. You pray you do not hear it. Tonight, however, something is different. Under the cloak of a storm, a real boat, small, fast, and desperate, has breached the patrol. You watch from the rocks as two men drag a third figure from the surf, leaving them gasping on the wet sand. This is the secret 99% of naval history completely ignores, because it's messy, it's greedy, and it isn't glorious. The real story of sea power isn't about heroic battles. It's written in the silent, shadowy ledgers of a black market economy. This vessel, sleek and dark, is not a warship. It's one of the Ghost Fleet, and it's the key to a conspiracy that reaches the highest thrones of Europe. These are state-of-the-art merchant cogs, built for speed and capacity, but armed to the teeth. They are the private, bloody-knuckled delivery service of a syndicate known only as the Compass. The monks are not just praying for souls. They are calculating profits, weighing contraband, and hiding their sins from the very God they claim to serve. Brother Thomas sees the understanding and the terror in your eyes. His gaze is hard. Some prayers, he says, his voice a low rumble, are for a good harvest. Ours are for a safe passage. Say nothing, to anyone. You are an accomplice now. The knowledge is a stone in your own gut. It is building a new one, a much larger, more comfortable prison with invisible walls, a prison you don't even know you're in. That night, you are given a new task. You are not to smuggle books, but to hunt them, to find and acquire specific texts. Texts on Republican governance, on atheistic philosophy, on social equality. Not for preservation, but for suppression. You have become a book burner in the name of enlightenment. And as you prepare for your voyage, you realize the awful, final irony. The war that never was, the one with the Dutch, has finally become real. Sir Richard, whose family has run this coast for 200 years. Sir Richard, who collects the war tax. You see the silent, terrifying exchange between them. The priest is not a shepherd guiding his flock. He is an actor on a stage, and the Lord is his director. This entire war, you realize, is a piece of theater. The script is fear. The stage is your home. The price of admission is your money and your sons. 99% of people believe the church was the center of medieval life. The truth is far darker. You watch the pen scratch across the paper, the sound a dry whisper against the low murmur of the crowd. That signature isn't ending a war, it's burying a body. By turning the longest conspiracy in European history into a punchline, they ensure no one will ever take it seriously again. The laughter that fills the room is the sound of a cover-up achieving permanence. It's the ultimate "nothing to see here" sign-off, sealed with a pint and a handshake. This single, absurd event is designed to erase everything that came before. The woman who washes the clothes, whose specific way of folding a noble's tunic signals that a bribe has been accepted. This is the real ledger. It cannot be burned. It cannot be seized. It is an economy woven into the very fabric of daily life, an intricate dance of survival dismissed as mindless routine. You feel the weight of it in your shoulders, the cold dread that lives in your gut. It tastes like metal. Piss is the house of Thomas Keene, and you are witnessing his erasure from time. The official report, a single sheet of paper filed and forgotten, will cite a stray ember from the hearth. A convenient, clean explanation. But the islanders who watch the timbers collapse in on themselves, they know the truth. You can't put out a fire like that with water. It burns on whispers, on fear. It burns on a truth that was getting too close to the surface. For decades, Keene was a ghost in his own community. Make it invisible until it forgets its own name. It's the same tactic that modern governments use, not with treacherous waters, but with economic exile, with social blacklisting. They push you to the margins where no one can hear you scream. Every few days, you see it. The Ghost Fleet, a royal ship, sails stark against the sky that patrols the horizon. It never docks. It never sends a boat. It is simply there. A constant, silent reminder. But the true horror isn't the fleet. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Coded Creole, a bastard tongue of Dutch, Cornish, and smuggler's Latin that speaks not of formations and broadsides, but of cargo manifests and tides. This isn't hypocrisy. It's a business. This monastery isn't just a fortress of faith. It's a fortified warehouse, a bank for a syndicate that deals in the forbidden. It strikes you with a sudden shocking clarity that this is no different from the whispers you hear of in the modern world, centuries from now, of shell corporations and offshore accounts, of legitimate-looking charities, then are nothing but fronts to launder money and hide the assets of the powerful. They will create the Dark Ages as a concept, a story of a long, ignorant night from which humanity was rescued, conveniently, by the very ideas the Guild chose to release. It's the most sophisticated form of control yet. It's not about hiding the truth anymore. It's about drowning it in a sea of partial truths. It's the ancestor of the 24-hour news cycle, of curated social media feeds, of the algorithm that shows you a comfortable, tailored reality. The Guild isn't fighting the Church's prison of the mind anymore. Light, thin, and milky struggles through the grimy lancet window. Father Michael is at the pulpit. He's a good man, but his hands are shaking as he grips the worn wood. He preaches about the godless Dutch, their heresy, their threat to the soul of England. His voice echoes in the small space, a performance you have heard 100 times. But today, you see the lie. You see the way his eyes, slick with sweat, dart towards the back of the church, where the Lord of the Manor, Sir Richard, stands. To finally end the 335-year war between the Netherlands and a tiny clutch of English islands, a war everyone had forgotten existed. It is a perfect, whimsical footnote, a story for the evening news that will make the world chuckle. But this is not an ending. This is the final, most brilliant act of a centuries-long deception. The joke is the lock on the tomb. What 99% of the world will never understand is that this charming ceremony is the most sophisticated form of historical erasure ever devised. It is a masterstroke of misdirection. They are on the coast, they say, building defenses against an enemy you cannot name, but you know the truth whispered on the wind, the secret carried in the quiet glance between one woman and another. There is no enemy. There is only the ghost fleet, and the men are prisoners to its construction. So who runs the world they left behind? You do. The baker's wife, who marks her accounts in the scoring of her loaves. The herbalist, whose knotted bundles of thyme and rosemary are a perfect record of every transaction for medicine. The histories that matter most are not the ones you find on a shelf. They are the ones that were turned to ash. What they don't want you to know is that the past is not a settled country. It is a crime scene, and the most important evidence has been burned. Imagine the air on the Isles of Scilly in 1872. It's sharp with salt and damp with a fog that clings to your bones. But on one particular night, another smell overpowers it. The bitter, greasy smoke of a lifetime's work being devoured by flame. Here, you are a ghost long before you are a corpse. The air is thick with the metallic taste of despair. You watch the other islanders, the other hostages. You don't speak of the past. It is the one rule. To speak of your former life is to admit you have something left to lose. Your only currency is the secrets you keep locked behind your teeth. This is the timeless strategy of power that history books conveniently forget. You don't always need an axe to silence dissent. You just need to marginalize it, isolate it. They are hunting for people like her. She leans close, her voice a dry rustle of leaves. It's not God's wrath I fear, she whispers, her fingers scraping the last of the mold from the crock. It is the ships that fly no flag. They aren't here for the sick. They are here for the ones who know. You can hear his voice echoing in the rafters of the chapel, thundering against the decadence of the East. He calls these things spices, silks, perfumes, the vanities of the corrupt, the tools of the devil sent to tempt pious souls from the path of righteousness. 99% of people believe this. It is the word of the church. These are the fruits of heresy, banned from their shores, forbidden to their eyes. Yet here they are, piled in the dark, beneath a house of prayer. The truth dawns on you, cold and sharp as a shard of that Syrian glass. We can no longer simply be guardians. We must become editors. The room is silent, save for the rhythmic, clanking groan of the press being tested in the next room. It sounds like a giant's heartbeat. You understand the terrifying implication. The Guild is not going to release the truth. They are going to shape it. They will decide which of the ancient texts are safe to be printed and distributed, which ideas will fuel the coming Renaissance, and which will be buried again, perhaps forever. They will edit history. They will manufacture a narrative. You've just learned the first rule of this secret war. What you see can get you erased. And the second rule is clawing its way into your mind. Why would a king, a priest, and a secret fleet go to this much trouble for a box of old books? The thing they fear most isn't an army. It's a question. You are now standing inside the village church, a week after that night on the beach. The air is heavy with the scent of beeswax, damp stone, and collective fear. The smiles in the pub are real. The handshakes are firm. The flashes from the cameras are blinding, and the air is thick with the sweet, woody scent of pipe tobacco and stale beer. It is 1986. You are watching history being made, or so they tell you. The Dutch ambassador, a man in a crisp suit, shares a laugh with the chairman of the Isles of Scilly Council. They are here, in this cozy little pub, to sign a peace treaty. The red thread marks a debt paid by the blacksmith's wife. 3 chickens for a bolt of smuggled linen. A series of 3 small cross stitches beneath it confirms the delivery. 99% of all economic history is written by and for men of power. It speaks of treasuries, taxes, and trade routes controlled by kings. It never speaks of this. It never speaks of the shadow economy, the one that truly keeps a village from starving when the official structures have become a lie. The men are gone. Your husband, your sons, your neighbors. The miracle has worked perfectly. A war is being secretly imported into your home, and your prayers are the only thing covering the sound. You were the second son of a duke, and you knew which royal birth was illegitimate. The man beside you, mending a net with hands that once held a crucifix, was a priest who preached that God spoke to the poor as clearly as he did to the bishops. The family down the shore. Their father's head is on a spike on London Bridge, and their presence here ensures their powerful relatives on the mainland never think of rebellion. Your name has been struck from the records. Your lands seized. Officially, you died of a sudden fever. You discredit homegrown knowledge to maintain dependency on a central authority, just as we are taught to distrust our own instincts in favor of approved, profitable systems today. Your grandmother works in the flickering light, her hands sure and steady. But she keeps glancing at the window, not for the priest, but toward the silent river. She's seen the ships, the ghost fleet they call it, sent to quarantine the infected. But you've heard the whispers. They aren't just isolating plague villages. They're isolating centers of independent thought, places where old wisdom runs deeper than church doctrine. In the hollow space beneath the stone lie wooden crates, sealed with wax stamped not with the cross, but with a strange 8-pointed star, the symbol of the compass. Thomas pries one open. Inside, nestled in straw, is glasswork so fine it seems to have been spun from moonlight and water, shimmering with colors you've never seen. Syrian glass. He gestures to another crate, and you see the impossible sheen of silk. A river of crimson and gold, smuggled from the palaces of distant Cathay. And a deep, profound confusion settles in your soul. You think of the abbot's sermons. The truth is, for the guild, it was a terrifying new weapon that could backfire catastrophically. Information that had been controlled for centuries, trickling out through carefully chosen channels, could now be duplicated 1,000 times in a single day. It was like giving wildfire to an infant. The curator, now an old man with eyes that have seen too many secrets, gathers the senior members of the guild. For generations, he says, his voice a low rumble, we have been the librarians. We have saved the knowledge from the fire and the flood. But our mission must now change. Bound in cracked leather, filled with symbols you have never seen before, one of the shrouded men from the ship is on you in a second. He doesn't grab you. He just stands there, his presence a wall of cold dread. He leans in close, and his breath smells of cloves and wine, a rich man's breath. He says nothing. He just looks at your father, a look that conveys a universe of threat. Your father shoves you back, his hand trembling. He saw nothing, he whispers, the words catching in his throat. It's a model of power that still secretly shapes our world today. The man holds out a tarnished silver coin, stamped not with a king's face, but with a 4-pointed star. Your family gave you a name, he rasps, his voice rough as a whetstone. We can give you a future, and the world that comes with it. He doesn't ask you to kneel. He asks you to rise. The question hangs in the cold night air, heavier than any crown. Will you fade into history's footnote? Or will you become the hand that writes its darkest chapters? Minding the home, women's work. They would see the string of dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the row of polished oyster shells on the windowsill, and see only quaint poverty. They are trained to look for swords and ledgers, for conspiracies written in ink. They would never think to look here. They would never know they are standing in the accounting office of a revolution. You pull the thread tight, one stitch, then another. The pattern is not for strength. It is for memory. It is a record. You feel a new kind of cold, a cold that has nothing to do with the stone floor. It's the chilling realization that the deepest beliefs can be forged, that faith can be a cage, and that the most dangerous lies are the ones you desperately want to be true. And as the last villager shuffles forward to kiss the statue's feet, a man in that dark cove pries open a crate. Inside, there is no grain, no medicine, no gold. There is only polished steel and a map that will burn the borders of this kingdom. You pull the rough wool blanket tighter, but the cold is deeper than fabric. It's in your bones, a permanent resident. Out the single salt-stained opening that serves as a window, the sea is a churning wall of gray and white. It is your jailer, your warden, and your executioner, all in one. 99% of people, then and now, believe this is a simple fishing community, a quaint, remote corner of the kingdom. They don't know they are looking at a masterpiece of human disposal. You know the truth. You live it. Their book of spells, the one the priest would burn them for, was a medical journal, a record of what worked and what killed. The church needed you to be terrified of God's wrath. A population that fears the heavens is easy to control, but a population that can heal itself, that finds its salvation in the weeds and molds of the earth, that is a population that no longer needs to tithe for its life. It's a story as old as power. When you can't control the cure, you demonize it. The sound of it, a wet, grinding scrape across the damp floor, sets your teeth on edge, and then the smell hits you. It's not the smell of rot or earth or even death. It's rich, sweet, and spicy. It's the scent of a world you have only heard of in sailors' fables, a world beyond the gray seas and gray skies of your coastal life. It's the impossible perfume of cloves from a distant, sun-scorched island. And something else, something sharp and metallic, like the taste of fear in your own mouth. You are in a clandestine scriptorium in Genoa, a secret workshop hidden in the cellar of a spice merchant's warehouse. The air is a heady mix of salt, cinnamon, and the dry, dusty perfume of ancient parchment. Here, the guild's smuggled treasures are copied by hand, a painstaking process of preservation. But something new has arrived. A machine. A crude, hulking contraption of wood and metal, purchased from a man named Gutenberg in Mainz. A printing press. 99% of people believe the printing press was a miracle that brought enlightenment to the masses overnight. That's a children's story, a link in a chain he doesn't understand. For a few extra shillings, he helps unload the crates. Tonight, he brought you to learn the trade. He thinks he's teaching you to be a man. What he's really doing is signing your death warrant. A crate slips. It hits the wet stones of the beach with a splintering crack. Not the clink of coin or the thud of textiles. It's a dry, hollow sound. And for a second, in the flickering lantern light, you see it. Not gold, not weapons, scrolls. The island prisons, the secret routes, the dark trade, they need ruthless managers. And who is more ruthless than a man whose own family has declared him worthless? This is the forbidden truth of the age of exploration. The great adventurers and discoverers that fill the history books, they weren't heroes. They were the violent, disinherited sons of the elite, a surplus of human weapons unleashed upon the world. This system, this pipeline of angry, ambitious young men became the blueprint for every intelligence agency, every mercenary group that would follow for the next 1,000 years. The most complex financial ledger of the 17th century wasn't a book bound in leather. It was a collar made of lace. For centuries, historians dismissed it as a simple piece of decorative fashion, until a forensic analysis in our time revealed the truth. A truth they buried in plain sight. The needle makes a soft, rhythmic hiss-click as it pierces the rough wool of the cloak. Your fingers, calloused and nimble, guide the dark red thread. To any soldier from the Baron's garrison who might burst through your door, you are just a woman mending a tear. While your village is on its knees, celebrating its divine rescue, 3 miles down the coast, a different kind of work is being done. In a cove, shrouded by mist and guarded by men with silence in their eyes, heavy crates are being winched from the hold of a black ship. This is the real reason for the miracle: to bury a truth in piety, to weaponize your hope. Your belief is the shield that protects their operation. You look at the tear-streaked face of the Vosgian, and for the first time, you don't feel comfort. The most beautiful prison on earth was never built of stone. It was built of water. What they don't want you to know is that for 300 years, The Isles of Scilly were not a strategic outpost. They were a cage for secrets that could topple a crown. You wake up with salt on your lips. It's always the first and last taste of the day. The wind, a living thing, forces its way through the cracks in your stone hut, carrying the endless, mournful cry of gulls. She presses a cup of steaming, impossibly bitter tea to your brother's lips, a brew made from the willow bark that grows by the creek. Then she uncovers a small crock. Inside is a dark loaf of bread, furry with a strange blue-green mold. She scrapes the mold into a paste with lard and applies it to the festering sores on his chest. A poultice of witchcraft, a salve of heresy. 99% of people believe these women were servants of the devil. What they don't want you to know is that they were scientists. The heavy perfume of incense, usually reserved for the chapel above, feels desperate down here, a cloying attempt to mask a scent it cannot conquer. Brother Thomas, his face a roadmap of secrets carved by age, grunts as he wedges a crowbar into the seam of a great flagstone in the center of the floor. You add your weight, your muscles straining, your fingernails scraping against the gritty stone. There is a deep, groaning sound, the exhalation of a long-held breath as the stone gives way. Only a profound, chilling emptiness. You have seen how the world is truly run, not by kings or popes issuing grand decrees, but by men in quiet rooms, trading in the currency of shame and secrets. You realize the war with the Dutch isn't the only lie. The entire concept of sin and salvation you were raised with is a lie too. It's just another system of control, and you are now one of its secret masters. A single drop of rain can't be blamed for the flood. This is the Ghost Fleet, and 99% of the people in your village, the people sleeping just over that rise, believe it's part of the coastal defense, protection from the Dutch. They don't know the truth that's now coiling in your stomach like a cold snake. The fleet isn't here to protect you. It's here to use you, to use your fear, your coast, your silence. The man with the lantern, your father, puts a finger to his lips. The sound of his chapped skin against his own is like dry leaves skittering across a tombstone. He's part of it. You can hear the soft hiss of the rain on the thatched roof, a sound like 1,000 whispering secrets. This is the moment that truly defines you. Not your birth, but the choice born from injustice. He offers you command, not of a castle, but of a smuggling ship that slips through blockades like a phantom. He offers you purpose, not defending a legacy, but enforcing the brutal, hidden economy that truly runs the world. The truth is that powerful, life-saving knowledge has been buried before, sacrificed for control, for profit, for power. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, as you look at the world around you, at the systems you're told to trust, what vital, world-changing secret are they burning in the fire right now, hoping you only hear the scream and never the sizzle? It's the same magic trick your own world uses. A sensational headline blares from your screen. A manufactured outrage. A celebrity scandal. It's designed to make you feel anger, or joy, or pity. It is designed to make you look here. All while a law is quietly passed, a right is eroded, a deal is made in the shadows. They give you a weeping statue to look at, so you don't see the ghost ships unloading in the bay. It means the bailiff knows, she whispers, and the words freeze the air. It is the mark for a trap. The quilt, your family's secret history of defiance, suddenly feels like a shroud. and the pattern is clear. The ship is due tonight. You watch the wet, soft plop as he drops another fat leech onto your brother's skin. The metallic tang of blood fills the small room. This, they say, is God's will. This is the only way. But later, when the priest and his physician have gone to the next dying house, she arrives. Your grandmother, silent as a moth, her face a map of secrets. She carries no holy book, only a small cloth bundle. She doesn't speak of sin, she speaks of fever. The thing they buried wasn't a saint. It was a secret, interred beneath the cold flagstones of God's own house, and its ghost still whispers from the stones. You follow Brother Thomas down the cellar steps, the flame of his tallow lamp throwing your shadows long and twisted against the damp, weeping walls. The air grows colder with each step, a subterranean chill that seeps through the rough-spun wool of your habit and into your bones. It's a familiar chill, the scent of earth and stone, and centuries of stored wine. But tonight, something else hangs in the air. It's about knowing who people truly are behind the robes and the titles. It's the same today. Power isn't just money or influence, it's data. The digital ghosts in our own lives, the forgotten posts, the private messages, the things we think are buried. The Guild understood this 700 years ago. Their greatest weapon wasn't a sword. It was the perfect, damning piece of information. The Cardinal slumps back in his chair. He nods, just once. The threat is over. The Guild is safe. As you walk away, back into the Roman sunlight, you feel no victory. The air is thick with the smell of wet rope, tar, and something else. Old paper and dust, a scent that doesn't belong on the sea. You are 12 years old. Your hands are raw from hauling nets, but tonight, you are not a fisherman. You are a ghost. Like the ship silently gliding into the hidden cove, a vessel that appears on no official charts. Its sails are dyed a deep, starless black. He doesn't work for your father. He doesn't smell of the court or the clergy. He smells of salt, iron, and distant shores. He speaks of a third option, an unspoken path. He calls it the compass. He tells you that your dispossession is not a curse, but a qualification. Your desperation is not a weakness, but an asset. The Crown and the syndicate that runs the Ghost Fleet, he explains, need men just like you. Men who have already lost everything, so they fear nothing. Men with the training of a knight and the hunger of a beggar. They walked for years on peg legs, haunted by a memory of fire and screaming, but alive. This effective, brutal knowledge was suppressed. The Church, preferring to keep power in the mystery of God's will, called it butchery. They offered prayers that didn't work and holy water that couldn't stop gangrene. It was better for their power that you die piously than live through a heretical act of practical science. We believe medicine is a straight line, always improving, always progressing. That is the most dangerous lie we are told. Its heat travels up a thin copper tube, expertly embedded within the stone wall, and into the back of the statue's hollow head. The heat is just enough to warm a tiny hidden reservoir of scented oil, forcing a single drop through a pinhole channel carved by a master mason. You can almost hear it if you listen past the prayers, the faint, wet scrape of a nail on stone as the verger, hidden in the shadows, uses a long rod to release a second and then a third tear. This is the art of misdirection, perfected over centuries. She holds the quilt up in the flickering light. The new red thread forms a small, tight knot beside the pattern for the hidden cove. It's a symbol you've never been taught. It doesn't look like the mark for French brandy or Flemish cloth. It's jagged, sharp, an error. Grandmother, you ask, your voice trembling slightly. What does the red knot mean? She finally looks at you, and for the first time, you see not the stoic giant, but a terrified old woman. Her eyes reflect the dying fire. The church told you the plague was God's punishment. The truth is, the cure was growing right outside your hovel, and they burned women for knowing it. You are kneeling on a dirt floor that is turned to mud from spilled water and sweat. The air is thick with the smell of sickness, a sweet, cloying odor that clings to the back of your throat. Your brother's breath is a shallow rasp. The priest, his face a mask of pious certainty, murmurs about sin and repentance. Beside him, the physician, reeking of vinegar and self-importance, works his trade. What happens when the war ends, but the emergency is too profitable to let go? Who are the real masters behind the compass, and what other secret ledgers are still buried, waiting to be opened? The cardinal's face, which had been a mask of smug authority, collapses. The blood drains from it, leaving a waxy, corpse-like pallor. You can hear the soft, wet sound of his breath catching in his throat, a tiny, desperate gasp. The information you've just delivered is not about theology or statecraft. It's a human secret, a sin he thought buried and forgotten for 40 years. A skeleton in a closet so deep, he thought the door had turned to stone. This is how the real power works. It's not about armies. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1387. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Two men knew the truth about the cargo. One of them is already dead. The other is you. It's a moonless night, and the only light comes from a single, gutting lantern held by a man whose face is a mask of shadows. Or you can take the cross, sail to a land of heat and dust, and die for a cause you barely understand. A noble death, they call it. A convenient disposal. 99% of people believe this fairy tale of piety and pilgrimage. They don't see the truth. It was a system of social control, a pressure valve designed to bleed off the most dangerous men in the kingdom. Those with noble blood, a warrior's training, and absolutely nothing to lose. Tonight, that changes. A man finds you in the stables, his face a map of scars hidden by the dim lantern light. The pain is so absolute, it becomes a kind of peace. And then, darkness. You awaken hours later, shivering and slick with sweat, but the burning fever is gone. You are alive. Don't believe me? Ask the dead. In a mass grave on the Isles of Scilly, archaeologists found the proof history tried to hide. Skeletons from this era, with limbs cleanly amputated, and on the bone, the unmistakable signs of regrowth, lumps and smoothed over edges that could only form over months and years. These people didn't just survive the procedure. They lived, they worked. But 99% of people in this room are wrong. This isn't a miracle. It's a masterpiece of psychological warfare. What they don't want you to know is that Father Alcuin is not just a man of God. He is an agent of a group known only as the Compass, and he is a master of manufacturing belief. The secret is simple, buried in plain sight. Behind the altar, hidden from view, a small oil lamp has been burning for an hour. The powerful believe literacy is power, and for them, it is. They read edicts and tax rolls written on expensive vellum, but they are blind to the world the other 99% inhabit. They cannot read the meaning of a cloud's shape, the story told by a bird's flight, or the conspiracy woven into a quilt. The powerful read books, the people read the world itself. This shatters the greatest assumption of all, that those who could not write were ignorant. Their intelligence was simply written in a different script, a script of wind, water, stars, and thread. Your grandmother stopped stitching. The question is no longer if they will come for you. The only question is when. It isn't for England. It is a business transaction. You trace the serpentine emblem with your finger, the two heads seeming to watch you. One head is the crown, the other is the corporation, forever entwined. A shiver runs through you, not from the cold, but from the sudden, stark understanding of who truly holds power. The men fighting and dying in muddy fields believe they are shaping the future of their nation. The truth is, that future has already been sold. And now that you know, you can feel the weight of this forbidden knowledge. The cardinal is a thin, pale man with eyes like chips of ice. He believes the guild has grown too powerful. He knows about the ghost fleet, the secret trade. He threatens exposure. He thinks he has the upper hand. You have been trained for this moment by the curator. You don't bring threats of violence. You bring a single, carefully weaponized piece of truth. You lean forward and whisper a name, the name of a boy, and a date, and the name of a small village in Spain. The secret is what the fake war was hiding. The clues are not in battle records, but in the hushed whispers of men who unload ships at midnight, in the cold terror in a priest's eyes, and in the ledgers of a king who was getting rich from a war with no fighting. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and the forbidden truths that history tried to bury, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. A ghost haunting the halls of your own home. You've trained your entire life for a world that has no place for you. You can wield a long sword better than your brother. Your mind is sharper, your ambition a blade honed on the whetstone of resentment. You feel the familiar metallic taste of bitterness on your tongue. The official story has a neat little box for you. You can join the church, trade your sword for a rosary, and let your ambition wither in a cold monastery, praying for the souls of men who live the life you were denied. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Killing the creeping infection, sealing the arteries, and stopping the bleeding that would have otherwise killed you. Then it happens. A single glistening drop emerges from the corner of the Virgin's plaster eye. It catches the candlelight, a tiny star of impossible light. It holds for a breathtaking second before tracing a slow, perfect path down her cheek. A collective gasp fills the church, a sound like the sea pulling back from the shore just before a great wave. It's followed by a tidal wave of weeping, of cries to heaven, of pure, unadulterated belief. You feel it too. A warmth floods your chest, chasing out the cold dread. A miracle, here, for you. This is a language that cannot be burned like a heretic's book or confiscated like a revolutionary's pamphlet. It lives in the muscle memory of your grandmother's hands, a rebellion passed down from mother to daughter, hidden in the most obvious place imaginable. It's a chilling parallel to our own age, where modern dissidents embed secret messages in the digital noise of an ordinary image file, creating ghosts in the machine to evade the all-seeing eye of state surveillance. The technology changes, but the desperate, brilliant instinct to hide truth in plain sight is eternal. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drum against the silence. You're not just drawing a map. You are unspooling a thread from the tapestry of power, and you can feel the entire structure begin to shake. The quill slips in your sweating fingers, leaving a black smear across the parchment, a drop of blood from a fatal wound. The lie is imperfect, a sign of your descent, and you know, with a certainty that chills you far more than the draft from the window, that someone will notice. Every ship seized, every port blockaded can be blamed on the conflict. It's the birth of something monstrous, something you can feel echoing into your own time. This is the first corporate state, a system where the government manufactures a perpetual emergency to grant private powers unchecked authority. It's the same dark magic that allows modern states to invoke emergency powers to justify surveillance and control, to read your messages and watch your movements. All for your own safety. The fake war was the ultimate medieval backdoor. This ledger is the proof. The war isn't for God. The truth is, in this era, it's one of the most dangerous places on earth. A tangled web of ambition, blackmail, and theology, where a misplaced word could mean a swift fall from a high window. You walk through corridors that smell of cold incense and old paranoia. Your footsteps echo, a tiny, profane sound in the sacred silence. You are ushered into a chamber lined with books, not the forbidden kind you carry in your ship's hold, but endless volumes of canon law, the architecture of control. They told you there is a war on, with the Dutch, a great naval power. Any day now, their ships will appear like teeth on the horizon. So you watch, you pay your taxes, you listen to the priest pray for deliverance from the enemy. But in 3 centuries, the enemy never comes. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe a fever is a demon you can sweat out. Your village blames a sour-faced widow for the milk curdling. Welcome to the Middle Ages. The secret isn't that the war wasn't real. They tell you, history was shaped by kings and conquerors. The secret they buried under the laws of inheritance is that it was truly forged by the forgotten, the dispossessed, the second sons. You stand in your brother's shadow, a place you have occupied since birth. His shadow is long, cast by the firelight, and it swallows you whole. He wears silk, you wear wool. He will inherit the castle, the lands, the title, the very air you breathe. You will inherit his old horse and a name that has become a mockery. You are the spare, the afterthought. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. What they don't want you to know is that the secret to survival wasn't the blade, it was the fire. But Father Alcuin said these were devil's tricks, temptations to distract the faithful. He said the Lord was testing you, and now he has promised a sign. A woman beside you sobs, a raw, ragged sound. Her boy was taken by the fever last month. The man in front of you, his hands gnarled from a lifetime of pulling nets, murmurs a prayer. His boat was smashed on the rocks 2 nights ago. Every soul in this room is a frayed rope, stretched to its breaking point. You all need this. You need to believe you haven't been abandoned. What they don't want you to know is that this quilt is not for warmth. It is a data storage system. 99% of people, from the village priest to the king's own soldiers, would see a simple, rustic bed covering. They would see poverty. They would never see a celestial calendar, a tidal chart, and a secret timetable for a midnight rendezvous with smugglers. They would never understand that this object, so easily dismissed, is a forbidden library of knowledge, essential for survival, for defiance. This isn't just a dead story from a forgotten century. It's the blueprint for the world you live in now. The real maps today aren't of land and sea. They are the flows of capital, the satellite data showing crop yields before the public knows, the insider financial reports that move markets. Access to information is still the ultimate source of power, and it is just as ruthlessly guarded. The powerful still draw monsters on the maps to frighten you away from their treasures. They just call them market volatility and unacceptable risk. You read the words again, a cold dread seeping into you, more chilling than the stone floor. The agreement grants the compass the right to operate a privateer fleet in English waters. This isn't piracy, it's worse. It's state-sanctioned piracy. Under the permanent legal fiction of a state of war, their ships can stop any vessel, seize any cargo, and patrol any coastline, all under the king's authority. They are a shadow navy, a corporate fleet given the keys to the kingdom's waters, and you realize the terrifying genius of the lie. The Civil War provides the perfect cover. You are in Rome, a city of saints and spies, and you can feel the weight of 1,000 years of secrets pressing down on you. You are no longer a boy from Cornwall. You are a man, an agent of the Guild, living under a new name. Your mission, to deliver a message to a cardinal in the Vatican itself. A message that isn't written on paper. It's a memory, a piece of information so toxic it can't be trusted to ink. 99% of people imagine the Vatican as a place of serene prayer and holy light. 99% of people think a forgotten war is just a funny footnote in history. But the truth is a secret that has been protected by silence and blood for over 300 years. The real story isn't about soldiers. It's about the thing they were smuggling in the dead of night, a cargo so dangerous it could burn the world down. You are standing on a Cornish cliff in the year 1651. The fog is a wet shroud on your skin, tasting of salt and wood smoke. Below, the waves chew at the black rocks, a hungry, endless sound.